speaking of which, from one disaster to another, let's talk about the fly zone that he, as well as many Ukrainian diplomats and Ukrainian officials, the governments, Ukraine, and pretty much everyone who's from Ukraine, they want a no-fly zone. Now, Chris, tell me, what's a no-fly zone in your own words to the
A
audience?
no-fly, well, a no-fly zone means that in a specific air or region, no passing airplane or aircraft could pass through it. Because typically a no-fly zone is usually used in a state of war because they don't, they like Ukraine doesn't want to confuse a normal jetliner for a Russian fighter jet. So that's probably what they're meaning. They don't want to basically destroy civilian aircraft.
Yeah, that's one thing to consider. I mean, was there isn't there where like a couple years ago, I think around the Crimea area where like they shut down a commercial airline?
Hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty terrible. That was very upsetting. Now, now, the NATO leaders, especially the U.S., and it's been said by President Biden that a no-fly zone option is off the table as we speak, and and so why do you think they don't want a no-fly zone? Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious, but why do you think President Zelensky is demanding from time and time again a no-fly zone to be implemented on Ukraine airways.
Ukraine wants no fly zone because they don't want interference with what they're doing from NATO members too. But unfortunately, NATO's reasoning is kind of justified because if Ukraine enacts a no-fly zone, a lot of cargo or I guess, airdrops from like humanitarian or supplies is going to be much more difficult to do it on road because on road terrain it could be congested. They gotta
Yeah.
waste more on actually supplying the trucks, fueling them, and the vehicles. With the plane, it's just like go in and get out.
Wow. Yeah. I haven't thought about that actually. Not thinking about it, but yeah, that's a good analogy. And well, do you also think if because Putin said like beginning of this war that if NATO were to implement a no-fly zone, this will be considered as a, in his own words, I guess, World
Well,
War
Ukraine
Three.
is asking NATO to do the no-fly zone, meaning that NATO, if Zelensky wants NATO to enact a no-fly zone, because if NATO enacts a no-fly zone over Ukraine, then they are legally obligated to shoot down any Russian jets that pass into Ukraine. That's how it works.
Ah, okay, I see, I see.
So basically,
So with that said,
Zelensky
yeah.
wants NATO to deplete Russia's air power because Russian aircraft even are the biggest threat to Ukraine because they already bombed a lot of Ukraine's hospitals, schools. They don't want to suffer anywhere from this, so that's why they want the no-fly zone.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And also, okay, so wouldn't okay if NATO were to implement a no-fly zone, I guess well, not my case, but like wouldn't okay, let's say NATO were to put a no-fly zone across Ukraine, could be also limited to like some areas of Ukraine, like a limited no-fly zone, like not have a like put a fly zone around Kiev or a fly zone like
Well,
western of Ukraine. Could
this
that
is
really
war, dude.
happen?
Akip, this is war. There's no rules really. You just have to do what you can do to win. If even if they do, they NATO would still have to send their jets into Ukrainian territory to suppress the Russian Air Force. They would also have to try to destroy Russia's anti-aircraft weapons.
I agree. I agree with you. I agree with you
Like,
at that point.
yeah, that's why they don't want to put the no-fly zone.
And
I can
also,
see why. I can see why Zelensky wants the no-fly zone because he doesn't. His like the Russian. airports is probably the main form of destruction that Ukraine is experiencing.
Yeah, and well, I guess the Ukrainians are not. Well, it's not hard to say who's winning the dogfight in the air between the Russians and Ukrainians, but it's probably the Russians who are doing so, at least when it comes to like bombing their cities. um, so if NATO were okay again, if NATO were to implement a no-fly zone, wouldn't it just deter the Kremlin to like not like stop putting their to stop letting the Russian planes to Ukrainian airspace?
No, because even Putin said that like he would disregard any attempt to do that for NATO to do this, and it would basically drag the US and NATO into the conflict with Ukraine, which would spark another war, a bigger war.
Hmm, I see. But that said, wouldn't it like because if NATO were to put a no-fly zone, and yeah, I think I'm still going after this. If they were to put a no-fly zone, but if no Russian aircraft were to be hit yet by the so-called no-fly zone, would Russia still would still consider taking action on NATO,
Yeah,
even like
because
even they
if
yeah.
NATO, even if they, because Russia needs to maintain air superiority over Ukraine. If NATO enacts the no-fly zone, then NATO basically took away Russia's air superiority. So in Putin's eyes, this is basically disrupting the war effort, and Russia would have to know would then Russia would probably start attacking NATO allies too. So
Yeah, I
basically,
see.
the no-fly zone, if enacted, would basically be the catalyst and the reason in history of why World War III started.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's pretty much it's pretty much I guess I say self-explanatory from everyone else that no-fly zone should not be implemented, but you do feel bad for the Ukrainians, especially Zelensky, who wants to put this over Ukraine. But there's just only so much the NATO and allies could do to support Ukraine. But there's also limits to what they're allowed to do without being dragged into this conflict with Russia.
Hmm. Well, let's hope that doesn't happen because this is going to be the end of the podcast.
Yes, it will be in a podcast if that were to happen. But until then, we'll continue the podcast. And you know what? Nah, I'm kidding.